On release, this album went to number 4 on the Billboard Jazz charts. It's known as one of the guitarist's best album, and for many, it's one of the best jazz albums made during the 25 final years of the 20th century. It's been called one of the most productive and inspiring recording sessions in modern jazz. Tonight, we discuss none other than Pat Metheny and the album 8081. Hey, welcome back, everyone. It's good to see your faces.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's good to be seen. So tell us about the week. You know, we all have we've all got some kind of stories about the week, but so Dad, kick it off, baby, because I know you've been busy.
Yep. So last Wednesday, your mom and I drove to meet Ern and Des. We spent the night with them, and then we drove to Berlin, Ohio. And Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we came back on Sunday. Had a good time with Ern and Des, Uncle and Aunt, and then Cousin Connie and Ron. We went to an Amish country theater and saw a ventriloquist and a magic show, and Leonard spelled Lyndard, Leonard, and he was funny. He was a very funny guy. But they had two guys that sang some songs that were, they call themselves the Beachy Boys, not the Bestie Boys, not the Beach Boys, but the Beachy Boys, as in Beachy Amish. And they put lyrics to some of the popular songs that was about road apples and horse clomping and buggies going here and there, milking one of the funniest ones was milking the cow, and they demonstrated pulling the stuff to milk the cow. Nice. It was really funny. They're definitely not quality musicians, but they were funny. That was part of the highlight. Of course, now you know that I like riding my bike, and so I got 10 miles on the Holmes County Trail, and that was a joy to ride. That was on Saturday. But I was listening to some paper.
What did you listen to while you were riding your bike?
Yeah. Well, obviously I had 8081.
Okay. All right.
Well,
I just wondered.
While I'm riding. So I was listening earlier to Stan Getz, some of his stuff, and I was listening to some patriotic music as well, just to prepare my mind for the upcoming Memorial Day weekend. That's pretty much my week.
Very cool.
Matt, yeah. What about you?
Week. Well, last Wednesday they were doing a jazz night at a place called Pedal City here in Fort Wayne, and Pedal City is a landing spot for where you start. I don't know if you have these in Austin or not, but you see the big bikes riding around. It's got 8, 9, 10 people, and they're drinking a beer, drinking while they're riding. So yeah, Pedal City, they have a landing spot, a nice little bar, some food, and a nice outdoor area. They were having a jazz night, so Kendra and I went down to Pedal City, and Delaney and Grace met us there. And actually, Delaney, we got to hear Lady D play for half an hour, 40 minutes Wednesday night. So I got live jazz, and I got to hear Lady D play. Wow. So yeah, it was super exciting. And of course, this Wednesday night, 2 nights from tonight, she's going to be playing again at the club room with the Three Rivers Big Band. So more live jazz and more Lady D. I'm just so excited. I'm so stoked. Three Rivers Big Band always gets me going anyways. And then when Lady D sits in, come on, it just doesn't get any better than that. I'm not ashamed to say, and I'm not afraid to say, and I'll say it throughout the whole episode, but this week I gorged on Pat Metheny I didn't listen to just about any other jazz music this week besides Pat Metheny. Any chance I had to have music on, music playing, it was Pat. Not necessarily 8081 all the time. Yeah, he's got a huge collection of music to listen to, and I am just not ashamed to say that it was a comeback for more buffet all week long of Pat Metheny. So made my heart happy.
Can I ask you about Freaky Friday on Saturday?
Yes, thank you. That was on Saturday night, so I got to hear Lady D play again Saturday night. She was a musical going on here in town, and her and Raleigh Main. Raleigh is the guy that they hire for music for all of the musicals for the Civic Center, for the Embassy, and those kinds of programs. So when he needs a drummer, he calls Lady D, and she knocked it out of the park. The musical was a cute musical. If you've seen the movie Freaky Friday, where Jamie Lee Curtis and Lindsay Lohan, they swap, the mom becomes the daughter and the daughter becomes the mom. It was a cute, funny musical. Lady D knocked it out of the park. Dad, I'm so sorry you guys couldn't have been there. It was a great time.
Good.
So yeah, we couldn't see Lady D. She was in the pit, but we could hear her, and she stood up a couple of times during the intermission and waved to us. So
Freaky Friday on a Saturday.
Freaky Friday on a Saturday, yeah, for sure. So it was a great week for me. Great week in music. It's just an overall great week. I got the speakers put out on the patio, and so any chance I got to sit out there and listen to Pat made my heart happy. So
that's cool.
I figured you would gorge on Pat all week long. Pat Metheny has been a staple for you for as long as I know.
Yeah,
been a very, very long time. And had I really understood what that meant back then, I'd have probably been a bigger Pat Metheny fan. Just knowing how much you enjoyed listening to his music and knowing how much music he's got out there, it would take me years to catch up and be able to listen to it all.
Yeah.
So I did this week a little bit more of what I've done in the past, and that was just start with the decades. A couple of albums from each one of those, and just start to get into both the Pat Metheny and the group, as well as just listening to all the people he's played with. I really appreciated the Wikipedia page where it shows favorite collabs. So there was a whole list for my 6 Degrees of Miles, so I could just pick and choose from everybody.
Right.
But it was a great week for us listening to Pat Metheny and the album 8081. So we'll make a formal introduction to that album here in a minute. But my week's been pretty well standard. It's grind, that's for sure. I feel much worn out and tired, but the week in music was good. Pat Metheny was kind of nice and calming for most of it. I did find an album that may become my next go-to from, and I know what you're thinking, but I may be my next go-to from the Cone concert. When I need that kind of quiet moment, I think I found my new one. I'll tell you about it in a little bit.
Okay, I can't wait to hear. Yeah,
a lot of moving pieces, though, as we ramp up for Texas Jazz and Blues Camp now, less than a month away. We've got a gig now already scheduled for July 10th, which is after the camp, at the airport. So our kids will be playing on the main stage at the airport, which is going to be super cool for them. Joe told us last night, word's out that he's got a band that's playing, and so people are starting to say, hey, can you get your Sunday night crew out here? So
nice.
It's pretty impressive. Pretty impressive. Now if I can just learn to play trumpet.
Well, hey, I do have one more quick story about Wednesday night last week at the Pedal City. Mike, the guitar player, Mike Niglia is his name. He's a professor, and he plays with Three Rivers Big Band, and he plays with Delaney quite a bit. And then they had a bass player. This short, stout little man introduced himself as Andy Rice. Yeah. Delaney had known him. They worked together at Sweetwater. So Sunday when she was over for dinner, I told her that you'd be coming home, and she said, "Man, let's get a song together for you to play. Tell Drew to bring his horn home, and we'll have Drew Rice, and we'll ask Andy to come. We'll have Delaney Rice, Matt Rice, Andy Rice, and Drew Rice
That's cool.
do a song together." So,
That would be cool.
I mean, a drummer and a bass and 2 trumpet players. Come on,
That sounds like magic.
that sounds like Blue Bossa right out the pocket, right?
I'm ready to go. That's my sugar stick, baby. I can play that.
That's what I told her. I'm like, I'll learn Blue Bossa for when he comes home.
Oh, that's awesome. I'll send you a basic solo for it too. That way you've got a solo ready to go.
Okay, cool. That'll work. I do have a question for you, though. I got my latest copy of Downbeat. Now,
Yes.
on the channel, of course, we use Jazzwise Magazine, top 100 albums that shook the world from Jazzwise, but we also read Downbeat Magazine, so don't come at me. But I didn't see an advertisement for the Texas Jazz and Blues Camp like I did last year.
Yeah, is it the Jazz and Blues Camp this year? Is that the? I didn't get the issue yet.
Oh, you haven't gotten the issue yet.
No.
So I didn't see. That's what I'm asking, because last year you were featured. Your picture
I had
was
several
featured.
photos in there showing off.
Yeah.
There should be a spread in there.
Okay. All right. Maybe I'll look towards the back a little bit
But
harder.
it is the Jazz Camp issue, right?
Yeah, this is the 48th annual Downbeat Student Music Award issue. So this I just got
You know what?
yesterday.
You know what? I wish I knew what page it was. Our guitarist, Slick, we call him Slick. Isaac is in that.
Okay.
He is one of the students that won that. I'll show that picture right here above. But he is featured in that. So if that's the student award issue, I'm wondering if
I mean, it's got to be in this issue because if
do
it's
they
in
show
that,
the summer camps. Last year they had it was 10 pages of where to find summer camps.
well, I browsed the first 3/4 of the magazine this morning looking for it. I did not get the chance to finish due to work and time management today.
I'll check in when mine lands here, hopefully in the next couple of days.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to remind you that you've been in Downbeat Magazine.
and now I play with one of the students that is featured as one of the award winners. So, Slick, here's a shout out to you. You want to do the clips so we know what we're talking about?
Yep, that's what I was going to say.
All right. Then I'm just going to go ahead and start with my clip. I want to hear that first. I wanted to hear a section of the tune called "Open." This week, I just wanted to say it. We are covering. We got into this. Here we are, 10 minutes into this. This week, we're covering none other than Pat Metheny. The album is 8081. This came out on LP and CD on the ECM record label. This was recorded the 26th and the 29th of May, 1980. It features on it Pat Metheny on guitar, Michael Brecker and Dewey Redman on tenor sax, Charlie Hayden on bass, Jack DeJohnette on drums. 8081 is the album. This was a dual album compilation, or not compilation, but a dual album. I want to clarify that because the song "Open" is actually on the second record, first song. It is called "Open." It's a 15-minute song, and the writers are listed as Metheny, DeJohnette, Redman, Hayden, and Brecker. So
Brecker.
Everybody's on it.
Yep.
So I'm going to start. I want to hear the clip that begins at 10 minutes. I'll play for about a minute. cut it there because I'll just leave it run. The reason I wanted to hear that particular clip is that it's right at the end of one of the most gorgeous bassist solos. And when you listen to Charlie Hayden and Jack DeJohnette just playing together, there's a chemistry. And I love the way that sounded, but I wanted to incorporate everybody. When you've got two tenor sax players of this caliber, you've got an album that probably is listed as, and we'll talk about it in the slideshow, free jazz. You've got some freedom in the forms that Pat Metheny has put together. Now, song is written by all of them, so I'm guessing that there's some freedom in that as well. But then it starts to build and escalate. It gets quiet, and then louder, and then louder, and then louder. But I wanted to hear Dewey and Michael going back and forth with the sax, and then you can hear a little bit of Pat Metheny. That, to me, is a clip that doesn't represent the album per se, but it does tell you that there's a glimpse of this to come. And that song to me is just a banging tune. So
back in episode 86, we did Michael Brecker Week, and we both scored Michael pretty high. Now, I like the clip because you can tell when Brecker is playing, and you can tell when Dewey Redman is playing, because the intonation, the note choices, the overall sound of the tenor is Brecker, and then Redman's is a completely different sound. It was a great clip. Great clip.
And then I think that's important to say too, because Redman played with so many of the free jazz world.
Mm-hmm.
So he's coming in with that for musicians out there, you geeks out here, the vocabulary of the free jazz. And Brecker has that touch with Coltrane. I think he really did follow up with the vocabulary that Coltrane had. But Dewey Redman had such a beautiful free jazz style. So, yeah, I agree. You can hear the two different tones coming out of their
mm-hmm. Yeah. Great clip. Dad, what do you got?
I've got Pretty Scattered. Begin at 1 minute and play for 2 or 3 or 4 minutes, or maybe just to 2 minutes.
I got to say this as I'm loading it up. I'm looking off the screen to get it ready. I think it's really, really crucial to note that when we want to go in longer on the songs, there's probably a reason. We get excited. We're stoked to hear the tune, and I would love nothing more than just to review the album online with y'all. It's that important. So, Pretty Scattered, starting at 1 minute. Man, Dad.
You got it? You got it? You understand, obviously, the way you guys are responding. One of the reasons I picked this is pure Metheny right here.
Mm-hmm.
And you can hear the bass. You can hear DeJohnette. Oh, my. Such a sweet blending. And the rhythm and the style just, boom. It just comes out so pure and so rhythmic that obviously we could listen to that whole track as well as most any of the others, except maybe the one that's 12 and a half, 13 minutes long. That's a little bit long. us to listen to tonight.
Tonight, right? Yeah. Well, his note choices, especially in your clip there, Dad, remind me of a chef putting ingredients together to form a perfect dish.
Yeah.
He's just the notes that he has chosen, the way that he chooses to style it, the way that he plays it, it's, to me, it's uncomparable. Just to me.
Yep. I thought you'd like that, and I'm pretty sure that our listeners are going to appreciate that clip of Pure Metheny.
Pure Metheny, yeah.
It's funny because every time I listen to that song in general and that particular part of it, Matt, one of the elements that he was inspired by, all I could think about was smoking. What was it? Smoking at the half note.
At the half note, yep, by Wes Montgomery
himself. And I thought, man, if he's channeling that, you know what kind of goods. But Pat has his own thing, his own style, and that's what we love about any one of his albums. Sound. Yeah. Your song.
Well, it's funny because you both chose clips to highlight Pat or the rest of the band. My clip, I want to highlight his love for Ornette Coleman. So. My clip is Turnaround, which is an Ornette Coleman song that Pat puts his own spin on. And I'd like for you to start right around 2:30. And just, again, if Dad gets a minute, I get a minute as well. So give me 2:30 to 3:30.
You're so bad. You're so bad.
And here's our tip of the hat to Ornette Coleman, right?
Ornette Coleman, yeah.
Oh, Dookie.
So
great choice.
I don't think he's trying to outdo Ornette. I think he's just putting his own spin. Now, Turnaround is off the 1959 Ornette Coleman album. Tomorrow is the Question. I, of course, went and listened to that again today. That song. I did not listen to the whole album. He keeps the head this very, very similar. So the melody is very, very similar. But then when he expands into his solo section, of course, it's just a thing of beauty. It's a thing, and I am not a guitar player. I have practiced and played the guitar a little bit. The notes, again, he does them rhythmically and repetitively. In my clip, and he's just my brain would get confused if that was me on the guitar. My fingers would get confused. So he plays like a prince.
Yep.
So
yep. I want to do this because I think that part of our dialogue that's going to come needs to be understood where we're coming from when we say, whose album was it really? I want to just take a 30-second clip here. I know that means I'm getting two.
You're driving the bus. You're driving the bus.
I am driving the bus. And that's what I said earlier to Dad before we hit record. Don't forget, I'm driving the bus, baby. We get into this dialogue, Matt, you and I do throughout this album over the last year. Is it a Michael Brecker album? or is it a Pat Metheny album? And so I want to play a clip from the very opening track. It was called Two Folk Songs. It was a first part and a second part. So I want to highlight this first part where Brecker kicks in. And this is about 18 seconds in. And I'm going to cut it there, but so much of this entire album is really hearing that saxophone.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we're going to get into it a little bit later, but I wanted to play that clip just as part of our natural dialogue here. When you listen to the album, you are going to hear a lot of Michael Brecker. You've got one of the world's greatest rhythm sections sitting there in front of you. You've got Hayden and Metheny. You've got Dejanette. What kind of rhythm section is that, if not the world's best? So then you get a single horn laying it out in front, and it does reflect Michael Brecker then. It's a Pat Metheny album. And I think that's something that's to be discussed and discovered. A rhythm section is your guitar, your bass guitar, your piano, and your drum. And then you expect horns out in front. But Pat plays as Charlie Christian did, as Wes Montgomery did, as Jim Hall does, as it's an instrument. It's a single note instrument. And so, man, the whole album, I want to tell you later what I thought about it at the end, but let's get into the slideshow.
Okay, cool. All right, first slide. I've said it a million times, and I'll say it again. Whatever you do, do it to jazz. You can hear by our weekend music. That's pretty much what we do. We listen to jazz all week long, and we discuss an album. So, of course, this week, Pat Metheny, 8081. The artwork for me, totally ECM. You didn't even really need to put the ECM label on the bottom of it. You kind of just know it's ECM. So, very ECM-ish.
Yeah. Very ECM-ish.
All right, let's move on. Jazz lingo for the day. I was feeling kooky last night when I was putting the slideshow together, so I chose this tubs. Tubs is my lingo for the day, and it's slang for drums. Lady D and Grandpa R play a mean set of tubs.
Yes, they do. And I want to interject this for a moment. I actually had a phone call today about this. Wow. To see Grandpa and his granddaughter doing drums, to know the excitement that your dad had playing and learning to do that, and the legacy that leaves. He is taking drum lessons from his granddaughter. And so when this phone call came in, he had a whole host of things and how important that was. And it's so cool to see the younger generation stepping up to teach the older generation. So big shout out. But yeah, slang for drums.
Slang for drums.
Daddy O's beating on the tubs.
Tubs, baby. Tubs.
Oh, I think it's awesome. All right, let's move on to the next slide. Where you can get it, of course, all of the major streamers, you can get it. And I did check the LP and CD on Discogs. There are a few copies available of the LP and CD. Quote on there by Pat Metheny: "One of the things jazz has always excelled at is translating the reality of the times through its musical prism." The reality of the times. Think about 8081, 1979, 1980, 1981. What was going on in the 80s? What was going on in jazz in the 80s? The translation of the reality of the times through jazz.
Coming out of that rock and roll jazz of the 70s and into the pure electronic synthesizer. So that movement of things.
Yeah. for sure. And not to say that he's as harsh as Miles was about changing jazz, but and I'm not even sure 8081 is something brand new as far as jazz goes in the 79, 80, 81, 1981 category, but still the freedom to just translate the reality of the times.
Oh, yeah.
And I think he's done very, very well at that throughout his career. Yeah.
And he's bringing some really big names together. And the word that came to me is selfless. Each one of these artists are selfless and willingly performing on this album to bring it all together into some beautiful form, a beautiful form of jazz.
Yep.
So
that's a good way to describe it, is selfless.
Yeah.
Because if it was a Pat Metheny album, then it would just be Pat Metheny playing the guitar. That's all you'd get. Yep. So, we laughed a year ago. Is it a Brecker album that Metheny's guest on, or is it a Metheny album that Brecker's guest on? But yeah, no, that's a great way to put it, Dad. Cool. Let's move on to the timeline slide. Pat was born in 1954 in a small little town in Missouri. And if you've ever heard Pat say his hometown and his state, he does say Missouri. He does not say Missouri. So I found that interesting when I was listening to a podcast last week about Pat. Very first album that he released was 1975. And I'm going to question myself on that because on iTunes Music, it's listed Bright Size Life as 1967, which there's just no possible way that Bright Size Life came out in 1967 as his first album. So I think they got the date wrong. 1975 is what it says on Wikipedia for his first album, Bright Size Life. 1980 was when this album was released. And then in 1983, Pat had his very first Grammy win. So I just wanted to highlight multi-Grammy winner, many accolade awards that he's won. But 1983 was his first one. And then his latest album, called Moondial, was released last year in July 2024. Okay, let's move on to the information slide. We'll get through this quick and get on with our discussion. So the influences that I found, Miles Davis was a huge influence on him. Wes Montgomery, a fellow guitar player, a tremendous influence. He got chances to see Wes play live and got, his mom and dad bought him the records. And so he sat down and wanted to play like Wes. It did list Clark Terry as one of his influences. He did attend several Clark Terry concerts, and over on the Few Facts, I'll explain why. But he also said that the Beatles were one of his very biggest influences. So I find that interesting to not just jazz, but to throw the Beatles in there as one of your influences. I mean, come on. Think of the wider influence that the Beatles have had on all musicians, not just rock and roll, but yeah.
I remember reading that it influenced him because he saw them on TV like 64, 65. And he said, I need to pick up the guitar. And he left a different instrument, which I know you'll probably get to in a little bit.
Yeah, so. I will. Well, okay, since he saw the Beatles on TV, I'll tell a little story right now. I remember sitting watching the Elvis concert on a small black and white green TV that was on a TV stand like you'd eat dinner on. And I remember watching it live. I mean, it had to be live because we had no way to stop it or pause TV back then. So the Elvis concert was aired probably it had been on one of the major networks. But I remember, watching Elvis. So I can imagine him seeing the Beatles on TV thinking, wow, I want to do that. Or, man, they make me want to be able to play. So not that Elvis ever made me want to sing. I just telling the story because
thank you very much.
Okay, so for the discography, I stuck with strictly Pat Metheny. I did not go into Pat Metheny group because he's got way more albums with the Pat Metheny group, but just strictly Pat Metheny, his solo work. He's got 13 studio CDs, 5 live CDs, 3 soundtracks, and 4 compilations. So it's a substantial solo work to listen to. I listen to it all, but not this week. But for the past 30 years, I've been listening to Pat Metheny. So I've heard all of his studio stuff, all of the live stuff. So I love it. I love it. I love it. The genre that I got listed: jazz, fusion, and free jazz. Now he's mostly known for his fusion stuff. Pat Metheny Group.
Yep.
Definitely, with the vocalises and the percussion and the way that it's all just orchestrated for the fusion. The free jazz, the Ornette Coleman song X album that he did with Ornette. So it's on the free side. No, it's not on the free side. It is free jazz. So a few facts about Pat Metheny, and I actually learned some stuff this week about Pat Metheny. Now I've been a fan forever, listened to all the albums, but never really dug into his life. So he started on the trumpet. He started playing music on the trumpet, which I just thought was funny. He has an older brother, Mike Metheny, who was going to give him lessons on the trumpet, and Pat, he said, okay, I'll pick up the trumpet. He did win a scholarship from Downbeat Magazine to a jazz camp at 15 years old. So that's what got him kind of started in jazz. But I think, if I remember correctly, that it was on the guitar. He was already playing guitar at that point. A few years later, he's awarded a full scholarship to the University of Miami to come to the music department and learn music from the University of Miami. He was talking with the dean of the University of Miami, and the dean basically gave him a scholarship right there on the spot. I'll pay your way, come to the University of Miami and learn jazz. After the first semester, he went back to his friend, the dean, and he said, I'm not doing well. I can play music all day long, but I can't study. I can't do what you expect me. Right there on the spot, the dean said, okay, how about you come work for us? And he started a teaching role in that department.
Because it was brand new to electric guitar.
Yep.
Come teach electric guitar.
Yep.
I can't cut it as a student. Might as well make you a professor.
Might as well. Why not? Wait, you're going to pay me to play? Okay, sure. Oh, man. So I just thought that was cool. Just a few facts about Pat Metheny. I learned some stuff this week, digging into him that I didn't know.
I think that it has to be said, 20 Grammy Awards. He's got 3 gold albums, and he is the only person to have won Grammys in 10 different categories.
Wow.
I found that just to blow me away. It was like, wow, 20 Grammys, 10 different categories. Mm-hmm. I forgot about something when you were talking about influences, so I want to interject us. You had mentioned it in your clip. One of his influences was none other than Ornette Coleman.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And the fact that I found amazing, Pat Metheny's life changed forever after hearing the album 4 and More by Miles Davis. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, Smoking at the Half Note.
Yeah,
when he heard Wes Montgomery. And so just absolutely phenomenal.
Cool.
I found another influence.
Okay.
Kenny Burrell.
Uh-huh.
Apparently.
Yep.
Kenny Burrell.
I remember reading that throughout some of that info.
I do too. And I just highlighted a few of his influences. Yeah, Kenny for sure. Kenny for sure was an influence.
I think it's interesting in Wiki, though, and other websites, if you read about him, he gives a lot of people a lot of credit. Mm-hmm. And I think that goes back to that selflessness.
So exactly. He's got that kind of demeanor about him too. I sense that he's a very humble guy, very personable guy, willing to roll with the punches or go with the flow, if you will. Doesn't have to take charge, but he can be in charge if you need him to. So
yeah, and I think some of that can be heard. Matt, I'll put the link above your head right now. His interview with Rick Beato.
Okay.
So check right above Matt's head in the upper right hand corner of y'all's screen right now. We'll put that link to the interview with Rick Beato and Pat Metheny. Yeah. Killer time that was a great video to watch.
It's time that's not wasted watching YouTube.
Right
there. Literally, you're not wasting time by watching that interview. So, All right, let's go. Let me give a few facts about 8081. It was recorded over a 4-day period. It was very highly credibility in the jazz community went way up after this album release. Now, again, he released his first album in 75. He only had a couple albums before 8081. So the jazz community was still growing. He was still getting his roots in the community. And then as soon as 8081 came out, his credibility shot through the roof. A quote that I read about the album, and I failed to get the quoter's name on the slide. It's a fuse that leads to not an explosion, but another fuse. It's a great quote about 8081. I do too. You know, yeah, it's just a great quote. 8081 is listed as one of the top 10 jazz albums of the whole decade of the 1980s. On the 99 list, Pat came in at number 72 with the album Travels, which I had in my ear today. It's a beautiful live album, and we always say if you're going to choose between a live or a studio, always pick the live. Yeah. Pat is on point. He is on point for the Travel album. And on the 06 list, he came in at number 31 with Bright Size Life, which was just a couple before 8081. There's a couple albums before 8081. Beautiful selection. So I'm happy where he is on our list here at number 31 with 8081. 6 Degrees. Come on. I mean, we could do. I just picked Jack DeJohnette because he's on the album.
Yep.
And Jack, played a lot with Miles. So collabed a lot with Miles. So we got 1 Degree. Who else did you find? Who else you want to talk about?
It's funny because I came up with, of course, Chick Corea, Dave Holland.
Yep.
Mr. Herbie Hancock.
Yep.
You've got Jack on here, but Roy Haynes.
Okay.
John Schofield and Tony Williams.
Yep.
So those were just the ones listed as his favorite collabs at the end of Wikipedia. And I thought, man, oh man, all of them are just direct from Pat to Miles. To see how many people over the years that he's played with is just phenomenal. But to see that many 1 Degree from Miles is really cool.
It is. I mean, yeah, there are weeks where I struggle to find someone. I have to, search for an hour to try and find a degree to Miles. But this week was super easy. I didn't even really have to search. I mean, when you think of Jack DeJohnette, when you think of Chick Corea and Herbie, those big names come to mind right away. And you put 2 and 2 together in just a matter of minutes. So let's move on to the final slide for me. Today in jazz history. Today, the episode drops on May 28th. Today, trumpeter Thad Jones was born in Pontiac, Michigan in 1923. The clarinet player Sidney Bechet and Muggsy Spanier record China Boy in 1940, which, again, I'm thinking Sidney Bechet, old, 1890s, and then to realize that he was still putting stuff out in 1940, it blew me away when I saw that on the Jazz History website. So one final quote by Pat Metheny. If we're going to list guitar influences, Wes Montgomery by far. Beyond that, Clifford Brown, Miles Davis, and Freddie Hubbard. Our influences. His influence is my influence. Me and Freddie.
Oh, man, I could not believe that. When I saw that, I thought, my word, Clifford Brown, come on. But if you're starting to trumpet in the 60s, who are you going to learn from? Only the best. I'm surprised Fats wasn't on there, but I'll take Clifford and Freddie.
I'll take Freddie all day long. Oh man! All right, Dad, tell us what's new.
Well, I've got an album that I think y'all are going to like. It's Kenny Wheeler's "Some Days Are Better," subtitled "The Lost Scores." So it's a legacy album, and it's Kenny Wheeler does obviously an orchestra. And he's got some names that some might recognize. I don't think I recognize any of them. but there's like 10 other artists that's on this album. Shelley Berg, and Anthony Charles, James Copus, John DeVerja, Ingrid Jensen, several names. I don't know if you recognize any of them, but not only do I like the album cover, the color of it, the style, and down at the bottom right of the album, it identifies those various artists that are on this. Kenneth Wheeler is a Canadian composer, and I think this album is a marvelous piece. They call it the lost scores, because apparently he was not forthcoming or wasn't pushing or didn't demand that his music get recognized or something like this.
It was even more deeper than that. They were just songs that he didn't think needed to be cut at the time. He recorded lots of other things around that and left these things on the cutting board.
Yeah. And then these artists got together and said, "Hey, we've got to showcase this music because it's primo. It's prime stuff. It is smooth and refreshing, and I think our listeners will really, if they don't already know, which I would anticipate, many of them are aware of Kenny Wheeler.
Well,
but if not, listen to this album.
I think that's going to be something to be discussed, because I think Kenny Wheeler got pushed and swept under the rug. I don't think people really understand the legacy that he left. Kenny passed away in September of 2014, and people started to go through his works and think, man, oh man, this guy left a legacy bigger than what we ever thought. Nick Smart, I believe is who it is, started to pull all of the collection of things together. Mm-hmm. Trumpet player, flugelhorn, composer, brilliant musician. Mm-hmm. And this album really does kind of highlight his capabilities.
It's funny because she's not listed on the cover, but Emma Rowitz, the artist that we talked about 3 weeks ago as one of our new artist picks. So
did not know that.
I cannot wait to put it in my ears.
Yep.
Well, this is going to be an album that I'm going to put on my top 10. Okay. And I will go back to this album repeatedly. I think it just speaks volumes, not only to the artistry, but to the music, to jazz itself, and orchestral jazz.
Yep.
It's one fine piece of musicianship.
So I was really blown away to see this album come over from you to highlight for the new album of the week. It is the Lost Scores, and so it's highlighting some music that was never before played by Kenny. He was the brilliant composer, wrote over 100 compositions focused on the big band, so it's going to be a big band sound. But just recently, I was talking with a friend of mine who plays baritone sax and tenor sax, and he had mentioned that a friend of his, a professor at LSU, had co-written the book, Song for Someone. So I just got this a couple of weeks ago. This Song for Someone is the musical life of Kenny Wheeler, only available on hardback, so it'd become my carry-around. You want to talk jazz, I'll smack the book with you. And I'm really looking forward to it. It is a foreword by Dave Holland. Oh, so I'm looking for. I haven't even cracked it because I'm still looking at Playing Changes by Nate Chinnon. But yes, this was a great album. I've consumed it now twice.
I can't wait to listen to it. I was still gorging on Pat this afternoon, so I'm sure I'll put it in my ear very, very soon.
Frosty beverage on the back porch on a cool evening. Listen to some big band.
There you go.
Yeah. Let us know what you think.
Okay, I will. Yeah,
I'm looking forward to hearing what your response would be.
All right, let's get into the album.
Okay.
Overall thoughts. Go.
My overall thought is Pat is a sound scientist. He knows the chemicals to put together to concoct the perfect blend of acids and bases and whatever else is needed for the project that he's working on. He's not a mad scientist, but a sound scientist nonetheless. We've said it over and over again in our personal discussion. The quote that he said was, I play what sounds good to me. And if you don't like it, that's fine. It sounds good to me and I like it. I love Pat's sound. I love the way he plays. I've been a fan of his. I've seen him live twice here in my hometown, both times. Once at the Sweetwater Music Pavilion, which seats about 3,000 people maybe. Unfortunately, it wasn't full, but I don't care. I had a great time. And then the other time was at the Clyde Theater, which seats about 2,500 people, and it was full that night. And that was the Dreambox tour just last year. So, and that was just Pat on the Dreambox tour, him and his guitar, and that's it. He brought his 25 string harpsichord or whatever he calls it. It's a beautiful instrument. He plays the snot out of it, and just, yeah, he's a sound scientist.
Can I read a quote here by Pat Metheny? People sometimes say it takes a long time to become a jazz fan, but for me, it took about 5 seconds. Is that good?
That is awesome. If you listen to our radio channel, my friend Wynton Marsalis reads that quote as a commercial on the radio channel.
Really?
Yeah.
WTUR-DB.
So this album was so stylistic and inviting and refreshing. The whole album draws you into listening more and more and enjoying. It's an enjoyable album to listen to. And again, it's definitely Pat Metheny. And Matt, you introduced me to Pat Metheny how many years ago?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how many albums I've got on my computer that I could pull up at any point and start listening to more of Pat Metheny, which I didn't have time to do this week. But
right
with Jack DeJohnette, I am telling you, this guy, wow.
And that would be a rabbit hole that you could run down for the next 6 months and listen to Jack's work, not just with Metheny, but with everyone else that he's worked with. That's the great fun part about this journey.
Oh my, you're right. So, and I do want to hear more of Jack DeJohnette, and I only saw a little bit of his history and background, but he's got a long list of accomplishments and achievements. And his rhythmic style is like, it will blow your mind the way this man plays. Yeah. And I think he's still alive, like 84 years old. I don't know if he's still playing, but I would bet that he does. So, yeah, I really like this album.
Drew, what about you?
I really appreciated it. It was an interesting album because, the dialogue is at a Michael Brecker. There was so much saxophone out front. Pat has a unique style, and that's for sure. And I remember the dialogue that you and I got into about Gary Burton. Mm-hmm. He took some music over to Gary and said, hey, I'm ready to do an album. And Gary listened to it and said, no, you're not. Come back with something fresh. And Pat then worked diligently at the School of Berkeley to really get his sound. And he came back and they said, yep, that's the sound. So when you hear the first album from 75, and then you hear the progression here 5 years later, he's playing with the best of the best. Now, Matt, you and I got into this a long time ago. People that are playing at Berkeley, they come out swinging jazz, and they're known.
Yep.
A lot of our faves came from Berkeley. Mm-hmm. A lot of those people ended up playing with and for ECM because of the creativity that formed there. So I really appreciated it. Some of my notes left me back and forth, though. Matt, I think you started with it was going to be a 10 and nobody's going to change your mind. And there were subtleties that made you. I started with, I don't really know what I'm listening for, so I ranked it up from there. So we met in the middle with our final scores. I did have a note. And it was weird for me because I said it was almost like the album was of different personalities. you're not quite sure which one you're going to get based on the flow, based on the rhythms, based on free jazz, or is it smooth Wes Montgomery guitar and blues? And then all of a sudden you got Dewey Redman throwing some free jazz stuff out there in the mix of all of it. And so it seemed like multiple personalities almost. The fact remains, as one coherent double album, it was brilliant. Just brilliant. And it's a good sample of how diverse he was at 26 when he recorded this album. And in the years to come, it only gets better.
8081 for me was, I had listened to it previously. Again, I've been a Pat Metheny fan since 1996. I had heard it previously, but it wasn't one of the ones that I would continually go back to because it was almost too jazzy for me, if you know what I mean.
Yep.
But this time around, last year and again this week, I've come to realize that that's when, like you said, he's really starting to blossom. He's got a few albums under his belt, and he's playing with Brecker and Dewey, and he's got this just awesome group that he can just flourish in and just release his inner badness. He's just
right.
Man. Okay.
I'm gonna say this because I said I'd mention it earlier. Watercolors from 1977 could just about become my go-to versus the Cone concert from Keith Jarrett.
Okay.
When I need the chill, when I need to bring my blood pressure down, when I need to just relax and tune in, Watercolors from 77. Eberhard Weber was on bass. I think that's what hit me the most, is that his style. We talked about him last week with the homage to Eberhard. That album, I just want to put that side note in there. Now,
did you listen to New Chautauqua? Because those two albums
this week, but it was on my early.
Okay. Very, very similar. And if yes, New Chautauqua for me was my first introduction to Pat Metheny.
Okay.
The very first album that I had ever heard.
I've listened to both of those albums, and I like them both. And I'm not sure Watercolor. I can almost see the album cover, and the album cover is just itself is calming and inviting.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Dad, you mentioned this last week. You're never going to get to listen to all these jazz albums, not in a lifetime or three. And if you just dial up how many albums Metheny Group has, you'll spend a lifetime enjoying every single one of them.
Metheny with Charlie Hayden.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I think about this every week. I think about it, especially when I'm driving. If I listen to jazz a lot, most all of the time when I'm driving, if I were to get into an accident and pass away, I would want whoever come to rescue me and get me out of the car to know that I'm a jazz fan, right? There are some albums where I think, man, if I get crashed right now, I don't want them to know that I've been listening to this album. But with Pat, I would feel like the first responders would know if they heard Pat Metheny coming through the radio. Oh man, this guy likes jazz.
He went out listening to beautiful music.
Yep.
Oh man, and what's the one you're going into the tomb with? Sputnik
by Maria Schneider. Yes. Yep. No qualms. No. Yep. I got no regrets. I know.
Gregory Porter, baby. Gregory Porter.
Yeah. Yes. Yep. That's another one where if I get in a wreck and the first responders come and then Gregory Porter's playing on the radio. Wow, this guy likes jazz.
Did you say Maria Schneider?
Yep.
So let's rate this.
Okay, cool.
Whoever wants to go first.
Well, let me go first because all of my excitement and all my love for Pat Metheny, I could not go all the way to the top. This week, for me, 8081 got a 9.5. I do love Pat Metheny, but as we had discussed, you and I personally, we laughed and we discussed it, but there's a lot of Brecker on the album, almost too much for me. You put the album on expecting to hear Pat, and you hear a lot of Pat Metheny. Don't get me wrong, but the amount of Brecker that I heard was almost just a little too much. Now it's funny because this week, last year when we did it, Moondial had just came out this week. So July 24th of last year is when we actually did this album. So you got Moondial in your ear and you got 8081 in your ear together. You can really hear the progression, but 9.5 for me.
And you had indicated that in the note when we were talking. Brecker dominates a lot of the music.
Yep.
And I think that's why I wanted to play that clip earlier, just to talk about that. Dad,
Yeah.
Your thoughts?
Well, I'll tell you what, I really struggled. At first, I wasn't going to rate it very high at all, but then I listened to it, and my interest increased, and I thought 9.5 for certain. But then, I'm sorry, listen to Jack DeJohnette, and I had to boost it, baby. I had to boost it. It's a 10.
Okay.
It's a 10. That's where I stand.
That's great.
I'm grateful for you to be in on this dialogue, for you to be listening to jazz. I'm grateful that Matt and I have a dad to plug in with this.
Yeah.
This is just super, super amazing. So that was really cool. I'm glad to know that this album got a 10. Now I really am I'm struggling here. Maybe I should. I gave this album an 8.5. I would change that now after listening to it over this last, year almost, 10 months. I would have changed that just enough, but 8.5 is where I left it.
Still a good score. It's still a really good score. Dad, did the album shake your world?
Yes, it did.
Drew?
It did.
It did.
Drew? Okay.
It did.
Would you recommend this album to a first-time listener? If you're talking with somebody that you talk with throughout the week and they say, hey, you listen to jazz, what should I listen to? Would this be one of the albums, Pat Metheny 8081?
I could do that.
Yeah.
I really could. I could do that.
Okay.
Yep.
Let me ask you one final question. Was there a better Pat Metheny album? Was there a different Pat Metheny album that you liked better?
That's a hard call.
While Dad's thinking about that, is there one that you would have?
I'm a huge fan of Pat Metheny Group, and for me, my go-to album, if I can't think of anything to play and I'm in the mood for Pat, it's Still Life Talking. I texted you a picture of my patio last week, and I had just put up the speakers, and the first thing I wanted to hear, not just because it was Pat Metheny week, the first thing I wanted to hear in my speakers on my patio, watching the sunset, Still Life Talking, and it just forget about it. That's my favorite. It's my favorite Pat Metheny album.
Yeah.
Is Still Life Talking.
Dad, was there anything else that stood out?
No, I mean, I have not listened to much of Pat Metheny this week at all, so I wouldn't know what to say at this point.
All right.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I don't think that I would say any other one would be my first go-to. This, for anybody, listen to Pat Metheny. Run through your digital dialogue or whatever it is and pick a Pat Metheny album. That's the one to start with Pat. I love the 78 Pat Metheny group.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, come on.
Mm-hmm.
But so many great Pat.
Well, here's my fear though. Okay, and I tend to do this quite a bit. You go to an artist and you see the very top album on their list. And for Pat, it's Moondial, the latest one that he's released. Now, that's a single artist. He's the only one that's playing. He's playing his baritone guitar. But I got to tell you, it's not that it's boring, because it's not boring. It's Pat Metheny, but it's not true Pat. It's not 8081. It's not Pat Metheny Group. So if that's the first album that a new listener to Pat Metheny is going to encounter, they're going to set it aside and think, I don't want to listen to that.
I see that.
It's boring. Man, get into 8081, get into Still Life Talking, get into Right Size Life, Letter from Home, New Chautauqua. Yeah, just
get into one of them.
This might be a good time for another Pat Metheny quote, if I may.
Sure, drop it.
Okay. Jazz is not something that can be defined through blunt instruments. It's much more poetic than that.
Mm-hmm.
And isn't that true about what we've said and what we've heard? about Pat Metheny. It's poetic.
Yes.
So let it flow. Let it instill. Let it fill your mind with some really sweet stuff.
And I would say this, because when you read that quote, Dad, Matt and I will joke about this for a lifetime. Stop playing the butter notes.
Yep.
And when Miles said stop playing the butter notes, he said play something that sounds beautiful and it's harmonic. It becomes poetry. It becomes beauty. So you see what I'm up to, Matt.
I do.
You know what's going on in my hands here.
I know. I see it.
Today we legitimately turn the page.
Get to turn the page. Now, this also marks a milestone for us because in the magazine, up until now, and we're on number 31, Pat Metheny this week, but up until now, it's been quarter pages, 4 to a page, 2 to a page, 4 artists in the spread.
Y'all go get your own magazine, jazzwise.com.
But we turn the page to number 30, introduce this week's artist.
You sure?
Yep.
All right. Number 30 on our countdown to number 1 is Chick Corea, Return to Forever. This was on ECM, LP and CD. It was recorded the 2nd and 3rd of February of 1972. Holy crap.
Yeah.
I noticed as you were introducing that, your voice got almost reverent and soft. What? Did you notice that, Matt?
I did. But
Low and with a reverent tone to it.
wait until you hear the album. Because
I'm going to have to put sunglasses on.
it's gonna knock your socks off.
Yes.
So we think.
I mean, it may. I mean, it may. Now, I will tell you that Drew, I struggled with Chick, and you talked me down off the cliff, and I appreciate that fact so that I could come into Chick Corea Week with some fresh eyes.
And I think that the lesson that I've been learning through jazz music is that we really have to listen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not just the music. It's the world around us. It's what's going on. It's the people. It's the places. Walk a mile in somebody's shoe, if you will. But when you start to hear music that moves you, then you begin to realize where you're at. Just the soul, the sound, and I think that's why my reverence comes in for this album. Return to Forever from Chick Corea. Tapestry, a beautiful painting. Whatever you want to think, gourmet food, something that hits your palate just right. That's our palate. Some people have different palates, but for us, that's it. So don't forget, all y'all can find us on our website, theunconnoisseur.com. Thanks for joining us on YouTube and the podcast that we have out there. Thanks for all the comments and the great feedback from the shorts and the long form video. We look forward to seeing y'all next week.
Peace out.
Adios.
Good night. Thank you.